In 2008, alternative metal pioneers Deftones were working on what would be their sixth studio album, Eros, but their plans would come to a screeching halt following a horrific car accident that left one of its members in a vegetative state. What many people may not know is that it wasn't this member's first serious accident, as there had been a similar incident happening several years prior. Today, let's take a look at the life of Deftones bassist Chi Cheng. Born in 1970 in Davis, California, which was a short drive from Deftones' home of Sacramento, bassist Chi Cheng's father was a prominent cardiologist. Cheng would be an English student at Sacramento State and would join Deftones shortly after their formation in 1988. Frontman Chino Marino would tell Revolver, "I believe I was probably 16 or 17. Chi was a couple of years older than me, so he was 18 or 19. The band had started at that point, but we needed to find a new bass player. And Stefan and I had come across Chi's number, and Chi and his brother Ming both played bass, and Stefan saw an ad for him, but Ming was more of a funk player and Chi was more of a metal guy. So Stefan made the call and Ming answered the phone. Stefan told him about the band and what we were doing, and right away Ming said, 'You're looking for my brother?' So we put Chi on the phone, and we made a plan for him to come to our rehearsal space, which was Stefan's mom's garage. Marino would add about meeting the bassist for the first time. He just looked like an interesting character, and he was super nice, pretty open and joking a lot. And then he smiled his big sort of crooked smile. I think everybody gravitated towards him right away. As for their first rehearsal, Marino would recall Cheng's playing having more of a 60s vibe to it. By the time he joined the group, guitarist Stephen Carpenter was already a member, and after going through a few drummers, Abe Cunningham became the group's permanent drummer. What was interesting about Cheng and Deftones' sound was that even though they had a very heavy sound, Cheng's influences weren't really heavy, with Marino revealing to Revolver, the guy hardly ever listened to any heavy music at all, and I loved that about him. He was his own person, but it wasn't anything that anybody in the group thought was weird. It was what made us what we are. But yeah, he loved Willie Nelson, Dolly Parton, old school country, stuff like that. He was sort of a hippie though, too. He loved reggae, Taj Mahal, old soul music. He was very much into the roots of any genre. It was after joining Deftones that Cheng was still attending school and living with his girlfriend on campus. Marino would crash on Cheng's couch quite a bit, and eventually the bassist and his girlfriend broke up, and Marino and Cheng became roommates. Marino would get a job working at one of the dining halls on campus, while Cheng's father paid the other half of the rent, provided his son attended school. As Deftones started to get more recognition, both Marino and Cheng were now working at Tower Records and had played a showcase for Maverick Records, Madonna's label. They would both be working one day when they got a call saying they gotten offered a recording deal. Cheng soon quit school and focused solely on music, while initially keeping it from his father so he could still get his rent subsidized. Marino would look back fondly at his early years with Cheng recalling to Revolver, "Being a couple years older, he looked out for me, so the second half of my life and the beginning of my adult life started out by being with Chi. From that point on, we spent every day together." Apart from his time in Deftones, Cheng would release a spoken word CD called The Bamboo Parachute in 2000. It was the same year that Deftones released their much acclaimed third album, White Pony, but despite the album's success and accolades, the next 6 years would be a tumultuous time for the band, for both their interpersonal relationships and their personal lives. Cheng would tell author John Wiederhorn in the book Louder Than Hell how much turmoil his personal life was in during the making of the band's 2003 self-titled album, saying, "I was so effed up I don't remember writing Deftones. I wouldn't remember playing in the studio at all. I was using every kind of drug except heroin. I was just broken up because of my divorce, and I was going through the irresponsible routes." Cheng would claim that his bandmates threatened at one point to haul him off to rehab unless he shaped up, which he did. In the same book, he would reveal that he was in a pretty serious car accident that may have been foreshadowing his future. He would tell Wiederhorn he was driving down the Pacific Coast Highway and was involved in a collision with a car coming off an access. The bassist would end up blowing out his knees and shoulders and would be quoted as saying, "They had to airlift me out. I never lost consciousness. I thought I might die, but I was pretty comfortable with it. I thought I might be a drag for my wife and kids to go on without me." Surely chilling words of what would come next. The band's 2006 record Saturday Night Wrist would see the group enlist a new producer in Bob Ezrin, a choice they later regretted as the band clashed with the producer. It was during this time Marino struggled with substance abuse and halfway through the recording process went off and worked on his side project, Team Sheep. In fact, the album's recording would begin in 2004, with the group taking 2005 off, and the album being stitched together through song ideas that the members sent through email. Work on Deftones' sixth studio album, Eros, began in May of 2007 and carried over into 2008 with a planned 2009 release. The band even gave fans a sneak peek of material on their forthcoming record, playing the track Melanie during live shows. In January of 2008, the band announced the title of their new album, at the time Eros, which was a joke they came up with after touring Germany and witnessing German adult films and hearing the word Eros being used again and again. Recording on the album would happen later that spring, and the band would work with producer Terry Date, who they cut their first several albums with. Marino would tell Billboard in 2007, "We're going in there and playing as 5 of us in a room with just our instruments, no other distractions. Basically, when we first started the band, us in the garage, no Pro Tools or anything to get ahead of ourselves." In a separate interview, he would tell Louder Sound, "We were getting along so well during the Eros sessions. It's like the music actually was even taking a backseat to our friendships. We'd go into the studio, and we were into playing the board game Risk at the time, so we'd set up this elaborate game of Risk that would last for a few weeks at a time. Terry Date was producing that record, and he'd come in and be like, 'Come on guys, let's get to work,' and we'd be like, 'One more game.' We were having so much fun together as friends and reconnecting." Then during those sessions is when Chi had his accident. It would be on November 4th, 2008, Cheng was involved in a car accident in Santa Clara, California. He was the passenger of a car driven by his sister May, coming back from their older brother's memorial when they hit another vehicle going 60 miles per hour. Their car flipped over several times, and Cheng, who was now wearing a seatbelt, was ejected into the pavement. 2 off-duty EMTs who drove by the scene and had their equipment with them were able to attend to the bassist until an ambulance arrived. His sister, who was wearing her seatbelt, only sustained minor injuries. The accident left the bassist in a coma, and in February of 2009, the band would announce an appearance at the Bamboozle Left Music Festival for the spring, with Quicksand bassist Sergio Vega filling in for Cheng. While Vega was only a temporary replacement at the time, he would end up becoming the band's full-time bassist due to Cheng's health. By 2010, there was some promising news that the bassist was now said to be in a semi-conscious state. He was able to slightly move his hands and legs on command. By 2012, he was allowed to return home to continue his recovery, but he would never be able to communicate or speak again, let alone play the bass. Shortly after the announcement of his car accident, a website called One Love for Chi was set up by a fan to share stories about the bassist, provide updates on his prognosis and his recovery, and a donation page was set up to deal with escalating medical bills. His bandmates would play 2 benefit shows for him in 2009, and their album Eros would be shelved. Deftones would return in 2010 with a new album, Diamond Eyes, and in the liner notes they would pay tribute to their friend and former bandmate, writing, "Chi, we missed you dearly in the making of this record. You're in our minds always. Hope to talk to you again soon, buddy." Marino would tell Revolver those early days following the accident and visiting their friend in the hospital, revealing, "All the guys went up to the hospital in the Bay Area that day. At that point, Chi was all bandaged up and you couldn't even recognize him. But we started taking it day by day. Every day we'd hear news, he's doing this, he might make it, he's doing better." To make a long story short, that went on for a good 4.5 years with a lot of ups and downs, and for a while the band stuff was the furthest thing from our minds. About 6 months after the accident, we finally started playing. We never really had a meeting or anything, we just got together, and I think that was a very therapeutic moment for us. There was obviously a big piece missing, but it felt like at least we had each other. Chi's son Gabe would join Deftones on stage in 2012 during a gig in San Francisco to perform the song Root. Sadly, nearly a year later, on the morning of April 14, 2013, Cheng was rushed to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. He succumbed to cardiac arrest and would pass away at the age of 42. Marino would reveal that between the time of his accident and his death, there were many close calls with him admitting to Revolver. Over the years, there have been a few times where things had gotten pretty bad, where he'd have these episodes, these seizures, and his vitals would go crazy and he'd get rushed to the hospital and things wouldn't look good. In 2014, on the 1-year anniversary of Chi's death, the band released a previously unheard song from their shelved Eros album called Smile. The band would return to the same studios known as the spot where Eros was recorded in 2020 for their latest album, Ohms. It was a studio that left a bittersweet taste for the members. Louder Sound would write about the band's studio space for Ohms, and I quote, When it was time to start work on the new album Ohms, the band decided to revamp the area and assembled for a week of cleaning, carpeting, painting, and bringing in new furnishings. It held profoundly personal memories for each of them, of all-nighters spent playing music, skating on the inbuilt halfpipe, and sleeping in the lofts. There were great times and times spent living on the edge. Chino went to his own room and purged boxes of stuff that, and I quote, had old memories tied to it that I didn't want. During an interview conducted by the Broward Palm Beach New Times, drummer Abe Cunningham spoke about the effect of Cheng's death on the band and how once he passed, he described it as a relief, saying, "Honestly, the most emotionally draining and cathartic album was the Diamond Eyes record because that is when everything happened. His passing for me was a relief, for him, for his family, for us, when his accident happened. It wasn't immediate. He was seriously injured and left in a minimally conscious state for 5 years. All the initial emotion was when the accident happened, and to have him pass was a relief after all those years. This is the first album with him not being here, but he's still here. He had a tremendous spirit and he's here with us. I miss the dude more than anything." In December of 2020, it was announced that a second collection of spoken word tracks from Cheng would be released the following year in conjunction with a group called Buckle Up for Chi, which raises awareness about vehicle safety. The album, called the Head Up Project, was taken from a January 2001 performance in Sacramento. However, if you go to the website today, the product doesn't appear to be there anymore. That does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like button and subscribe, and we'll see you again rocking out your stories. Take care.